Thanks for checking out this movie review video. So this is for the 2023 release 65, and I'm going to tell you off the bat, not a big fan of this one. From what I've heard, a lot of people have not been a big fan of this one, and it's pretty easy to see why. There's a lot of been done before going on with this movie. It feels like it's ripped off a lot of other movies. It's just, the script is not there. Big time, the script is not there. But there are a few positives in the movie. Obviously, I'm going to talk about that in this no-spoiler review. So good, bad, and let's get into it. Written and directed by Scott Beck and Bryan Woods, who also did A Quiet Place, Haunt, and the new The Boogeyman, which I haven't heard a whole lot about The Boogeyman. I think it's out at this point when I'm recording this, but I haven't heard a lot about it, which is typically not a good thing. Because I heard like nothing about 65 when it came out, and I see why. This stars Adam Driver, who obviously has been in things like Star Wars, Black Klansman, The Dead Don't Die, House of Gucci. He got his big start with the show Girls on HBO. Apparently he was a Marine, so he was able to kind of use some of his training as a Marine in this movie, so that was probably an interesting thing for him to be able to pull from that. Synopsis: it's basically about a guy who needs to go on a mission to a planet that's like futuristic type sci-fi with a little bit of horror elements to it. He needs to go to this planet, and there are dinosaurs, and that's basically it. Like, there's not a whole lot to the story. There is one main thing to the story that I won't reveal that is very important to it. That, it's the whole driving force in the movie, in essence. And if you want to watch it, I don't want to spoil that for you. So really, that's the best I'm going to do synopsis-wise. The way the movie starts feels a bit overly dramatic, and I think the score actually has a lot to do with that. It kind of set the tone for the movie. It is overall overly dramatic, in my opinion. I think they go way too hard on trying to pull on heartstrings and trying way too often to set up those moments to try and pull at heartstrings, that they end up losing entertainment factor. There's not a whole lot of entertainment factor. There are moments where they do get to some more interesting stuff, some more like danger and dread and intense moments, but they had a lot more opportunity to go after those moments, and they just did not take those opportunities. So it was a pretty big disappointment in that category. There are some good moments when the score does get dropped, but overall the score is very aggressive. The music is played like cranked up to 11. It's like it's beating you over the head a lot of the times. This is one of my big pet peeves, is when the music is so over the top and loud and beating you over the head that you feel like the filmmakers are screaming at you to feel a certain way in a movie, and that's not a good thing. Like, your viewers are smarter than you would like to think. You don't need to grab people by the hand and lead them in an auditory way, so it's a little much. They don't take much time on backstory, which does help get things a little more moving a little bit better in the beginning and getting to more interesting, intriguing things. The problem with that is they do a good job with kind of being like, we don't need to give you all this backstory so we can really start getting into things. And then once they start to kind of get into things, they start pulling back a bunch, and then it becomes like kind of mundane as far as the movie goes. It gets really boring. It gets significantly slowed down. It seems very meandering. That's one of the big things, is the script seems excessively meandering in what it's trying to do. It didn't seem like it had a whole lot of a focus other than this main underlying theme that's going on, which honestly isn't a main underlying theme that you can build the entire movie off of. You have to have other things going on. And for me, they keep bringing this thing up over and over and over again. And I understand why they're trying to do it, but they do it too much, and it really does get to a point where it's very much eye-rolling, where you're just like, oh my gosh, we're doing this again, we're talking about this again, we're focusing on this again. Can we actually get to something interesting, please? There's a whole lot of not interesting with this movie, especially when you factor in the fact that there have been a lot of movies that have done stuff like this before and done it much better. When you're doing a movie that has kind of been done before, or it's portions of movies that have been done before kind of put together into something new, you need to do something new. You need to stand out. You need to make people say, this is why I need to see this movie. This is why it matters. As opposed to just being like, yeah, this is also a movie that exists. Because that's what this movie feels like. This is just a movie that exists. And I know why no one was talking about it. I will say that the shooting locations and the set design are well done. Shooting locations in particular, because they did hit a bunch of different places that they ended up shooting because they needed different looks to the terrain. And that is one of the best parts of the movie, in my opinion, is seeing these interesting changes in terrain. Also, set design-wise, I thought whoever was in charge of that did a really good job on it. The sets look very nice, very intricate when they need to. It has that futuristic feel, but it also has that kind of prehistoric primal feel to it as well. So atmosphere-wise, I think they did a really good job capturing what they needed to. I will also say that the cinematography is pretty well handled. The directing overall is good, but not in the sense of moving things along. I think overall vision was a little bit aimless in a sense, just like the script. And that's the thing, is the people who directed it also wrote it, and you can tell that they didn't fully know what they were wanting to do with the script, so they didn't fully know what they wanted to do when they were directing it as well. This is one of those instances where it would have been better if who wrote the script didn't direct it, because then someone could have put a different spin on it. Just saying. Maybe could have done something with it there, but in the end, like I say a lot of times, if you don't have a really good script or just a solid script as the backbone of the movie, you're going to have a lot of problems with making it good. There is some character relationship building in this, and some of it's done in ways that just feel weird. They feel kind of off. They feel kind of like, is this actually how you're trying to forge this relationship between these two characters and grow this relationship and evolve their relationship? Odd choices in that realm. Also, the fact that they keep going back to that all the time, kind of like they keep going back to this main thing where they're trying to pull at people's heartstrings. They're also just continually going back to this relationship building between these two characters, which is not interesting, especially not in those odd ways that they're choosing to do it. So it just feels like a lot of wasted time on very just whatever things. They spent a lot of time focusing on mundane stuff, which is a very bad thing for a movie that's only an hour and a half. That's the thing. If you have a story to tell, an hour and a half is not a long period of time. I will say this movie has pretty bad pacing, and it feels like it's basically a 2-hour movie. So if a hour and a half movie is feeling like 2 hours, that's terrible. That says all sorts of terrible things about the pacing of the movie. And this has tons of issues when it comes to that. Not to say that there aren't those moments where it does kind of pick up, because it does. The beginning, I think, gets going pretty well. There are a few moments throughout that pick up a bit, but then it slows back down. And then the ending, I think the ending did a good job of picking the pace up. I think it kind of seems like they knew what they wanted to do in the beginning. They had a few ideas in the middle what they wanted to do, and they knew what they wanted to do for the ending. And then they kind of winged it with other stuff. Didn't have a solid idea. That's what it seemed like. I will say the CGI in this was pretty solid. A few moments where it looks a little bit wonky, a little bit off, but not too bad, especially since you do have creatures in this one, and they obviously are CGI. So you have to do pretty good CGI, and I thought it was pretty good. There is something you use to pull at the heartstrings of the viewer, and it's very overused in movies in general. It also has way too much time devoted to it in this movie. For me personally, it does not work. Part of that has to do with who I am as a person, how things are in my life in particular. I can definitely see what they're trying to go after mattering more and, impacting people more who aren't me. But it's just also, it's something that's been done so many times. And that's one of the big things about this movie, is there are so many aspects of this movie that have been done before, and they've been done way better before. And why does this matter then? Why did you even make the movie if you're not going to make something that stands out in any certain way? I'm just saying. The ending of this movie is I think it's a little bit too drawn out. Once again, this is one of the problems. It's only like an hour. I think it was an hour and 33 minutes with credits and everything. And that's just, If things are feeling too long and it's only about an hour and a half, that's bad. That's very, very bad. And then again, terrible pacing. So out of 5 stars with half stars in play, I mean, it's not the worst movie I've ever seen. It just doesn't matter a whole lot. So I'm going to give it 2 out of 5 stars. Thought about going 1.5 stars, but from a technical standpoint, the locations were good. The acting was actually, quite well done. There are some cool scenes. The CGI was pretty solid. The cinematography is good. There are good things about the movie. I just don't think it matters a whole lot that this movie exists. So 2 out of 5 stars, honestly. But this is where I'd love to hear your thoughts on it, especially if you liked it a lot more than I did. Give me a sentence or two letting me know why. Go ahead and put it in the comments. Also, if you can do me a quick favor, which you can do me this favor, this is a very easy one. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. That's your best way to repay me for all this free content I put out. I greatly appreciate it. Also, you can hit the notification bell button because then you'll know when I'm putting out new videos, which has been 3 a week at this point. But regardless, I really thank you for taking your time to watch this movie. Yeah, this video. I do appreciate that, especially if you made it this far. And until next time, keep it brutal.